Hey everyone, in this video I'd like to talk about the visual difference you get when comparing your full GI ray-traced rendering with the results you get when baking your light into Lightmaps and view them in real-time OpenGL. So for this example I took one of my models and placed it into the Spectralite QC environment that comes with the VRED asset installer. So on the right side you see the full GI rendering, and on the left the OpenGL result with texture-based lights and shadows. And obviously there are some differences I'd like to explain in that video. So first of all, we see a difference in the environment reflection. And this is because in ray tracing you see the physical accurate reflections coming from the environment at the place they should be. While in OpenGL the reflection is more or less a projection of the HDR dome in your scene onto the car, and therefore not physical accurate at all. The second difference we see in the high gloss and reflective areas like the side mirror or rims. And again, in OpenGL the environment dome is reflecting here without any bounces, while in ray tracing you see the first or second bounce and objects start reflecting into each other, like the side door reflecting in the side mirror or the ground reflecting in that rear bumper here. There's obviously a difference in the reflection. The third thing we can spot here in the rear wing is that the indirect light bouncing from the trunk onto the rear wing is not really visible, and high glossy and reflective materials like the carbon fiber or the aluminum parts. Therefore, you have to know VRED currently bakes just the diffuse part of the light, resulting in not seeing any lights for these kind of high glossy materials. So now that we have an understanding what causes these visual difference, we will have a look at the raw light and shadow data in ray tracing and OpenGL. So here I have my OpenGL scene, and we can have a look at the baked light and shadow while switching to the pre-computed illumination mode. And you can see that the car is much brighter on the left side than on the right side, and this is because it's in that Spectralite QC box, which is open on one side and pitch black, while the light is illuminating the car from the left. And what we actually want to compare is exactly that baked light and shadows with our ray tracing results. And therefore, most important you have to know is that you bake your light and shadows with the same settings you are using in ray tracing. So I will use 8 indirections for my light bounces, and therefore I also have to render my full GI rendering with 8 bounces. So this amount of trace depth is important when going to the bake light and shadow module and bake with 8 indirections as well. So let's turn on the ray tracer. Let's also turn on the Spectralite QC environment and switch into the realistic render mode. So here's my full GI rendering, and if I want to look into the several passes that are used for generating that images, I can go to my visualization tab, render passes, and then here we have the illumination channels. So, and actually our baking is a combination of the diffuse IBL illumination channel plus in addition the diffuse indirect illumination channel, right? And both are added on top of each other and basically give what we see when we bake light and shadows into our light maps. So what we have to do is rendering out 2 32-bit EXR images and layer them on top of each other in Photoshop. So here I have my diffuse IBL illumination, and here is my indirect light, and I can layer them top of each other with a linear dodge, so basically adding them. And this is then what we see if we compare it with the baked result. So this is the OpenGL result compared to my layered ray-traced light and shadows. So let's hop over back to the comparison side. And here we have these two results next to each other. And you can see that in the light and shadow, there is not much difference viewing the raw data. Of course, there are differences here in the high reflective components like the glass material or the aluminium for the screws, because they are not rendered in that ray traced channels at all. I also did a comparison for the vertex versus the texture-based baking process. And on the right side you see the vertex bake, on the left side is the texture-based approach. And there are some differences in that area and also here on the rear wing. But this is because that my mesh is not dense enough and does not have enough vertices to store my light maps on it. And you could obviously higher the amount of triangles or do a subdivision. I personally prefer using the texture-based approach, and even if it's more work to unwrap your geometry, you do not affect your model, and this is important for me as I go forth and back into other DCC tools. But you see both is possible, and here there are simply not enough information to store that. So that's it from my side, and I hope you found that information helpful. Let me know what else you would like to see on this YouTube channel in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to stay tuned for more information around Autodesk VRED. Bye!